just totally going to be such a pros and cons type of person. I do not think there is one way to do everything, and I don't think there's one best way to do everything.
I'm here! That was so smart of you.
I was looking at the sunset. In 2024, Eric and I traveled from Hendersonville, North Carolina to Phoenix, Arizona, and this is our recap video with all of the good, and I hope you enjoy. So in 2025, the course is the same as it was in 2024. The first 7-mile pavement climb was mostly in the group. There was mostly a follow car for a majority of that climb. It was max effort. I could tell, because it's such an early season race, that my top end was really struggling because I just had mostly done base up to that point. So really was on the struggle bus. Heart rate was maxed out. Power was maxed out. I found myself in the back end of the front group and well ahead of the group behind me, but I knew that if I slowed down at any point, that group behind me would catch up immediately, so I had to just kind of grit it out and push through to get to the turnoff. The turnoff onto the dirt was extremely unsafe, technical. There was holes, like there was a clear way to go. And so I think if you were going to pre-ride anything, pre-ride that turnoff onto the dirt, and then pre-ride that entire next section of trail. It was a commonplace for flats, people to wipe out. So that dirt section was, as you probably saw if you keep up with it, a lot of rollers, a lot of mountain bike, single track. The McDowell mountain bike part of the race is going to be very similar to this first dirt section. So there might be a pretty good argument to have a chunkier tire for this race. This is the bike I rode for the race, and it is a Kona Libre with Centrado H gravel tires. They're 40s. I had 1042 in the rear and 40 up in the front. Thursday, we pre-rode that key section of dirt right after the start. And if you don't have time to pre-ride the section prior to the race, I would say to make an effort to look forward and look at what's coming up. After that key part, it was kind of like full speed until McDowell. It was all fast gravel. If you can look ahead and see a turn of gravel coming onto pavement, knowing that that's going to potentially be sprayed out onto the pavement, just take a wide turn and keep your momentum through the turn so that when the group accelerates out of the turn that you're still holding on. When you turn into McDowell Mountain Regional Park, people started to, pick up the pace. Group kind of broke up right there. There was also a checkpoint, so a lot of the group actually stopped right there. I think that this checkpoint was where people that started with less, so they could get up that first 7-mile climb, had to get something for the next section of trail. I did not have that strategy. I packed knowing that I wouldn't stop at that checkpoint. And that's just because as a mountain biker, I didn't want to have to stop before the single track because I wanted to be ahead of as many people as I could. Whenever I look on the map and I pinpoint, okay, this checkpoint is right before a trail, I'm not hitting that checkpoint. If you got water at that checkpoint before McDowell, it's going to be kind of hard to drink from your water bottle through that windy single track, kind of sandy dirt. If someone was there with a pack, that's what I would do. McDowell was pretty punchy. I think I definitely felt the start of the race at that point. A lot of very quick downhills, narrow. And for me, there was such a focus on, okay, don't veer off the trail. There's cactuses out here. I'm not from the West. So I was just stay in control. Practiced turning on my gravel bike a lot beforehand. Wasn't much punchiness after the first half of the trail section. It was a lot of sustainable effort. At some point, you come back to that same checkpoint, and that was where I had to get another water bottle and I think a couple of gels. Felt a lot better at that point, so I was kind of like coming around from the high intensity. This is when I was like, whenever there's sustainable terrain, I need to eat something, because I had such a hard time drinking or eating anything during the McDowell single track. So I kind of was trying to overcompensate at that point with carb intake. In the beginning of the race, we obviously like threshold or over for the beginning, and then the trail section was pretty tough just to like stay ahead of people. So at that point, I need to intake a ton of carbs to make up for that effort. The gravel in the road section before hitting that middle trail section again. The time period where I caught up to some people, we were going like a pretty consistent pace. There wasn't anything to note. At that point, I didn't realize how hot it was going to be. Let's just put it this way. The weekend before going out to Arizona, we went out for a gravel ride and it snowed. So the 80-degree weather was definitely a shock. At that checkpoint, I had to douse myself with a bottle of water. And what you'll lose during this middle section is if you're kind of zoned out up here and you're just pushing, you're going to lose a lot of ground just by riding inefficiently. It's almost the same terrain. There's a little veer off that you rode down. So it's a lot of like momentum into the climb, momentum when you come down into the next climb. You need to be like thinking ahead, looking ahead at what's to come. And that alone will make your ride quicker and will make you ride more efficient. So this is something that might happen this year because of where the wafer course goes. At this point in the race, I was catching and passing a lot of the wafer riders, and at some point I must have gone too far over and had a puncture. It was a slower puncture, so I rode it all the way to that checkpoint at mile 83. Had somehow forgot to put the bacon strip like thread in the needle tool in my pocket, so I had to go ask the neutral support at that aid stop if they had that tool. Sometimes there's so many variables, like something will fall through and it's just hoping that what fell through isn't needed. Unfortunately, the situation it was. I got it fixed, had my CO2 kind of ready for the rest of the ride in case something happened with the bacon in the tire. We had driven the car up all the way to the start of the gravel, so I knew kind of the terrain. I knew what I would be looking at. So for me, it was really important to lay eyes on that entire climb before I raced it. Definitely the heat playing a role in my kind of lack to push myself much harder. The very last bit is a gravel section of climb, and you get to the top of this and it's so steep of a downhill. For me, as like a mountain biker, I'm like, this is awesome. You don't realize how you're so exhausted when you get up there. You're like, okay, this is actually kind of sketchy because I'm like fatigued on the upper body as well. And so going downhill, you have to be a little bit more careful. It was very slick. It was pretty straight, which was good. The thing is you had to decide early on if you were going to walk. So you couldn't just be going down this gravel and then be like, I'm going to walk now, because if you try to stop or put your foot down, you're going to eat it immediately. Definitely look ahead and make sure, if you can't pre-ride this section, which I didn't have the ability to, make sure that you're going to ride it and not stop halfway down and then try to stop. It's not going to work. It's kind of like sandy gravel, sandy dirt. At the bottom of this descent, before you have this little climb out of it, was sandy. So there was sand pits down there, and I would definitely practice some cyclocross sand pit action if you plan to race this race. And took my last bit of carbs out of this trail system, like climb out of the trail to get to the road. There was a little bit of that, like, this is so cool, look around. When I was a rower, they were like, Sierra, you gotta freaking keep your eyes forward. You can't be looking around at everything. And I was like, I hear you. And then there would be a picture of me that the freaking camera people would take of me looking out the boat, and they'd be like, what do we tell you? So that's kind of me on the bike. I'm gonna take it all in. That point in the race at the end was just like enjoying it and riding as hard as I could. So the road down obviously is the road up. You do have to pedal, so it's not just chilling on your bike. I was glad I took some carbs in before that road section down. Waiver riders were there, so there was a group of people that I was with, and we were all kind of pushing each other. I told Eric, I was like, whoever gets this finish line sprint gets 2 county line points, so it's on. And I beat him. Thank you all for watching. Hopefully that video helps you have a successful race in BWR Arizona. Any other links or helpful tips are in the caption below.